In today's episode of the 167, we're going to be looking at qualities and character traits for people who are taking high levels of leadership in the church. Stick around. There's a saying in the Bible that everybody in your room, in a coffee shop, Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 167 podcast. We're rocking, we're ready to go, joined by the usuals, the crowd favorites.
That's right.
Sven and Phil.
The dad dab.
The dad dab.
Yeah, it's a real thing in our home.
So only if the people that were on video were able to see that, though.
That is true, but everyone knows a dab and they know I'm a dad.
What makes it, okay, so is what qualifies a dad dab is the fact that it's a dad?
Because only dads are still doing it.
Okay. I'm sure some small kids are doing them as well still.
My son does it to rip me off.
Flip the dab. Can you believe it? Anyway, let's welcome people and then we can talk
So
about
good
the
to
dab.
have you guys here with the 167 podcast. It's an honor for us to be here. And the whole goal for our 167 podcast is that there's 168 hours in a week. One of them have to be in the house of God somewhere. Yeah. And so we want to add value to your life as a church, as people, throughout the rest of the week. And so we want to give that to you in a drip throughout the week. And so I'm imagining for people are listening to this while they're running on the treadmill.
Yeah.
They're driving to the shop.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if people are still driving to work. Let us know. Are you driving to work? And maybe they're watching this on the YouTubes. But
on the line,
we're happy to have you no matter where you're at. And you're one of the people that are listening. And I checked that out this week. We've had about 2,000 downloads on all streaming platforms and whatever.
Wow.
For the podcast. And so that's pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked about that.
That's amazing.
The 6 people who listen are just regulars.
They're downloading. They are clicking that download button.
And I think we're recording episode 27.
Great.
Is this 27?
It could be. I would be lying if I said with any surety.
Yeah, but can you imagine we made it past 20?
Yeah, and listen, we're there. We
need to celebrate.
Now we're closer to 50.
We're closer to 50.
We're halfway there, just over halfway to 50.
That's right.
The 50th episode is going to be crazy. But we want to welcome everybody. Just like Sven said, we just want to add value in this podcast. And what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, for those that have been joining us, is that we have been speaking about qualities of leaders and qualities of leadership. We've been looking at the book of Timothy, which provides such an amazing framework for it.
So good.
Paul gives great instruction and great advice to a young leader in Timothy who's stepping into a new position, and he has got obstacles and he's got things he needs to deal with, people he needs to deal with. How easy would leadership be if there weren't people involved? That'd be super easy.
Well, I want to take the spiritual approach and say, well, we've got to lead ourselves.
Sure.
So
that's also hard. Okay, it would still be pretty tricky. But he gives Timothy great advice, and we've been looking at things like
people.
I do. Shame, it's going to sound hectic. We do love people. We were looking at love a couple of weeks ago, which is a powerful podcast. Yeah. And last week spoke a bit about trustworthiness, what it means to be trustworthy, and how we can prove to be trustworthy to God, and ultimately be trusted with more in our leadership and be worthy of the call. In today's episode, we're going to have a look at another chapter in the book of Timothy. And we're going to have a discussion about some qualities, again, some traits of leadership, but a level of leadership that we actually haven't been speaking about in the last 2 episodes, really quite a higher level, if I can put it like that. These are some traits that people who are leading as pastors, leading as elders, team leaders, even on a life group leadership level, some qualities and some traits that they are, or that is advised from Paul to have in our lives. So maybe you're watching this and you're saying, okay, I'm figuring leadership out. I'm new on the journey. And you might not have a couple of these or all of these down. That's perfectly okay. We're all growing and learning, but it's always good to have a picture of the future. And I think all people are called to a level of leadership, but again, this is a higher level.
Yeah.
This is a bigger level. So some of the things we're speaking about, again, if you're not there yet, that's not a problem. But I think we're going to have some fun today. We're looking at 1 Timothy chapter 3. If anybody is wanting to have a look at these things and having a look at what it means to be a leader, and the first thing, just leadership in a church context is a noble task. The scripture tells us, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that is called of a leader. I think immediately when I think about leadership in the church, and you've been doing a lot longer than I, but there's a lot of sacrifice involved. There's a lot of laying down of what's comfortable, laying down of what's convenient. So I love the word noble because it calls for someone who's ready to be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of the traits we're going to talk about today has got a lot to do with an ability to lay down what is convenient, laying down what is comfortable, laying down maybe what you're even used to, or even how you've lived your life for 20, 25, 30 years, to step and to become, I want to say worthy, but to be able to be someone who can lead other people well. And like you said, lead yourself well.
Yeah, that's good.
So there's a couple of
Very
awesome traits here.
Before we go there,
Yeah.
so I was just thinking, that like Paul's saying to Timothy, leadership is something for us to aspire to. It's actually a good thing. It's a noble thing. And I think in our culture, leadership has gotten a bad rap.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because people have been self-serving leaders. And the whole thing of leadership is actually service.
Yeah.
And that's what Paul is laying down for Timothy. And that's what Jesus was the example that he laid down for his followers. He said, I haven't come to be served, but I've come to serve. And so leadership is really just about serving other people.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leadership will never go out of fashion. And that's the type of leadership that the world is short on. But so we want to help people to become leaders. And it is noble, because when you become a leader, we always look at the negative sides of becoming a leader.
Yeah.
You get a target on your back, or I don't know if I'm going to be under a microscope. Yeah, but it's also you get a good reputation. You can earn trust of people. They respect you. They actually do things because of what you said to them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great trust. It's a great opportunity to make a huge impact. And I love it that leadership is really a form of discipleship in the way that we're all called to lead somebody.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing of discipleship is I learn how to follow Jesus and I teach someone else how to follow Jesus. You've just become a leader. You're a parent, you've just become a leader.
Yeah.
So everyone has some influence with somebody. And I think what we're talking about today is, okay, these qualities go across the board for anybody, but most especially for the higher you go in leadership.
Yeah.
And I think sacrifice as a leader is a good thing because it keeps our motives in a better place.
Yeah. Do you think that the higher you go in leadership, maybe the more important some of these traits become? Because I think the more your influence grows, the greater the impact could be if something were to happen to a leader. And I think just based on what you're saying, I think there's a general maybe a mistrust of leaders or people in leadership positions these days based on exactly what you said. It's self-serving. People haven't always looked to serve the people or looked to serve those who they have influence on or over. Do you think that the church, well, I do think we know it should be different, but do you think that our ability to maybe just apply some of these traits and be willing to sit in the seat for long enough will develop this ability for people to just trust their leaders and to understand that people have been put in a position by God, and based on that, we want there to be leaders in our lives that we trust, and that when they speak, we're like, cool, we'll take that. But for some reason, and I'm not just referring to politicians, but it feels like that there's a lot of leaders, and there's that saying, trust is trust is earned, or what's earned trust?
I think it's respect.
Respect.
No, respect is given, trust is earned.
Yes, respect is given,
like
trust.
Honor is given. Yeah.
Yes, but I think in the church world, it's quite difficult. We've heard people speak about, Craig Rochelle mentioned, I'm going to give, but he's speaking as a leader.
Yeah.
I'm going to give trust, and then you are going to do something that maybe puts that in a position where it's in jeopardy, or I'm going to take it away. But my initial point is I'm going to give it, and I'm going to trust you.
Yes.
I don't think that's the stance of a lot of people today, especially with leaders. Do you think rightfully so?
I think there's been leaders that have made some. I always hate to criticize.
No. So it's not what I'm asking.
I think there's been a lot of leaders in people's lives that have let them down. And especially in a world that is so under a microscope, you can't hide anything. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think people have now become suspicious of every leader and have kind of want almost a leaderless society where everyone's on the same level. But leadership isn't about greater value. Leadership is just about a role to help make sure that people are going in a good direction.
Yeah.
And so I think that people should be wary of who speaks into their life.
Good, yeah.
And they should take time. But then I think as a leader, you can give trust to someone who's following you. But I don't know
to expect that
the other way around
yeah.
works. So I think you do need to work at earning people's trust.
Good,
and you do that, I think, by being consistent, by having a moral high ground, or at least owning your life, and not hiding things. And, you know, obviously there's some things that a leader can't share with people, but you shouldn't be hiding a lifestyle from people.
Yeah.
Particularly within church life or just as a Christian.
Yeah.
Right? So
we're going to get into this now, but I just thought of something else. I think being a leader is also a willingness to kind of be different, because even just growing up with younger people and stuff like that, it was often the person. So let's say everybody's drinking and partying, just an example, and there's somebody in your life that doesn't judge or make people feel bad, but just chooses not to go down the same route. You know, I'm going to do things a little differently. It's often that's the guy that people will speak to when things start getting out of hand, or that's the guy that people speak to when they maybe want to change. And we've experienced that with people coming to us after, not that we're perfect, but after just choosing certain things, a moral high ground, like you mentioned, and people coming and speaking to that guy. And I think a large level of leadership, especially when you're starting out as a leader, is a willingness to be different, is a willingness to take a stance, to hold the stance, and then to be okay with someone taking a while to come around, like you mentioned there, that earning of trust. Just because of, and it's got nothing to do with you. You've hit the nail on the head. It's everybody's had different experiences, even with parents. So if it could be like an authority thing, it could be anything like that. But for the leader, your responsibility is not, hey, why does no one want to follow me right in the beginning, or why am I not building influence quick enough? It's like, no, my responsibility first is to have a set of fundamentals that I will not waver on. Yeah. And that a time will come when people are like, well, that person seems to be consistent in what they're doing. I feel like things aren't going the way. That's only the guy people speak to.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing out to people is very, very important, because even Paul, he writes more about character than he does about skill to Timothy. And we can flip it. I think skill, we've spoken about this before in the podcast. Skill is important, but you can learn a lot of skills. Character needs to be developed. And so in those decisions that you're saying you're taking, where you're being different, that's a character development that it will serve you well long term. Yeah. And I think we want people to commit to long-term character growth and development so they can become leaders worth following. Good. And that's biblical leadership. And I think that's we will see now that there's certain expectations that Paul certainly had on spiritual leaders. Yeah. And I think we've got to learn to grow in each and every one of those. I think for me, before we get into it, like I always find that people have this resistance towards leadership because they don't see themselves as leaders. That's usually the biggest one. They don't see themselves as leaders, although other people do. Or they don't. So are you referring to people taking up a leadership position potentially? Okay. Like I'm identifying that I want to be a leader. Okay. You know, it's that ownership of I want to be a leader. Yeah. And then it's a little bit off the train of thought there, but that's either, hey, I don't identify myself as a leader, so I don't want to be like intentional about my leadership. Yes. Because if you own it, you can develop it. If you don't own it, it's just going to stay where it is. Also, someone else needs to take full responsibility for developing that thing, and then that'll never grow. Totally. And leaders are self-feeders. But or the other one that I find sometimes happening is just that, no, I don't want the responsibility. I just want to ask you, before we dive into this, with your journey of growing as a leader, is leadership something you always wanted? And if that is, that's cool, because there are people that are like that. Yeah. But how was your journey? What were you thinking when it comes to leadership? Yeah, leadership was something I pursued, I think, from a very young age. I loved leading. The motive, that's the thing. Like, why were you wanting to lead? Like, so from a high school level, did you want to be a prefect or a captain of a sports team because you liked the position, or you liked the accolade, or you liked what goes with it, or was it about,
I want to bring positive change and positive influence. So the motive, I can't say would have always been amazing, but it was something that was on my heart, and it was something that I felt if I wasn't in a leadership position that something was missing within me. So it was quite interesting because I 100% agree that there's some people that you identify and they don't even identify themselves. I mean, we see them, and we just see it's just leadership all over them. They've got everything. They demonstrate, and then you have a conversation with them, and it's just like, I've just never thought that's just never been a thought on my mind. It's just never been. So it's so interesting that you've got two different schools of people. But for me, it was always just I want to be a leader. I want to be someone who can lead the way, who can affect positive change, who can influence, and who people. For me, it was who people want to listen. But that's tricky sometimes because if you want everybody to like you and to listen to you and to be someone of influence, sometimes you might do stuff or risk things that necessarily. I don't think this is the best thing, but I think I think more people will like this, and I think more people will be keen to get on the bandwagon and keen to be influenced, which is dangerous because when it comes to leadership later on in life, your no is just as important, if not maybe more important than your yes sometimes. And leadership should, I think, cut down the middle because there's no gray area. It's black or it's white. So for me, it was learning that. It was like always wanted to be a leader, always wanted to affect change, always wanted to be in leadership positions. But I think I would do my best to get as many people to like me and as many people to be with me as possible. Where as I've gotten older, it's like, well, these are my fundamentals. These are my non-negotiables.
That's good.
These are the things I stand for. If somebody doesn't believe in it or doesn't like it, there's no hard feelings. But I'm not going to have sleepless nights as to why you don't like me or as to why you don't want to be a part of it. Whereas in the past, I totally would have. Like, to be open, I totally would have.
Yeah, and I think everyone's got their own kind of battle and journey. You know, it's quite interesting because for me, I would be similar in a sense that I pursued leadership, although I wasn't really in positions of leadership as a child, like growing up. And I had at this point where I'm saying, God, if you want me to be a leader, a position you're going to promote me. You trust that God promotes.
Yeah.
But what I felt like is just early in my career, not as a pastor before that, just my dad gave me leadership books to read from John Maxwell, and just because it improves the quality of you. It's self-improvement. And those qualities tend to rise up until people go, hey, we need you to do something. And you go, okay, fine, I'll do it. And there's different pathways into leadership. So it's not just I was born and I'm going for it or I'm resistant to it. There's different pathways to leadership. I just think what we got to focus on is not the role, but it's the character development. And that's where we want to swing into today's talk. I think it's just about let's develop good characters and character qualities, and let God deal with promote or not.
So with the skill and the gifting, and we're going to go now. Like now, we are going to go into this, but it's just so different because in high school, the guys that became the prefects or the leaders were the guys that were the best at stuff. So your smart kids would be prefects, your best sportsmen would be leaders. So it's like it shifts totally from a gift-orientated leadership position all the way into what we believe is strongest leadership, which is character and those type of traits. So like you mentioned, Paul had some amazing almost, I want to call them prerequisites or things that are expected of people who take leadership positions, especially strong leadership positions with a lot of responsibility. And we've got kind of a list. And again, if you'd like to see all of them, I don't think we'll get through all of them or even most of them today, but if you'd like to, please check out 1 Timothy 3. There's a full kind of conclusive list there what you can check out. But we're going to pull on a few that I think is going to be worth some really good conversation. The one that jumps out to me right in the beginning is this one, above reproach. And it's something that we speak about in church. It's very important when it comes to leadership in the church to be someone who is above reproach, but it's not a word that we hear very often. So in layman's terms, what would you say? What would you say be someone who is above reproach? What is that person?
For me, it's that there aren't questions of your integrity. There aren't reasons that you're giving people to be suspicious of you. I think people will always be suspicious of leaders, but that what they're thinking isn't actually found to be true. So for me, it's about holding a high level of integrity, that you keep things above board, that as a leader, you have systems in your life that help you with boundaries so that you can hold on to your integrity.
Yeah, integrity is vital.
It is, no, it's absolutely vital. And especially when it comes to spiritual leadership, if you don't have integrity, kind of what you do kind of isn't just questioned, but it's almost nullified.
Yeah.
Not that that's the right angle, because the ministry still does the work, but I've seen lots of people in senior leadership who are like around the world who have like scandals have come up, and all their work is kind of thrown into the same basket.
Yeah.
So we just want to be above reproach. Like, don't give people a reason to have legitimate concerns over your character.
I find this one so important. Because when I think about reproach, I think about integrity. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. And growing up, people would say that integrity was who you are and what you do when no one's around. And again, when I mention that, then I think about a word transparency. And as Christian leaders, and in this context, we're talking about people who could maybe even be teaching and ministering and leading bigger groups of people. Transparency is vital with who you are on stage, or who you are teaching, or who you are leading in the small group. Are you that person back at home?
Yes.
Are you that person when you are with your family, with your wife, with your kids, or by yourself? Or do you have to compartmentalize and separate? Okay, now I'm on stage. I've got you put the mask on and you have to carry. For one, I don't think it's sustainable to try to live and lead like that, because at some point the personalities and everything kind of needs to catch up with itself. And I think that's what leads to sometimes the anxiety, the panic attacks, the people wanting to leave because of I can't take it anymore, the stress, all of these things, because you've had to manage who you are in different situations with different people. Whereas this ability to be above reproach, it's to say kind of from the beginning, I'm going to make sure that who I am behind closed doors, who I am when nobody's around, I'm going to make sure that gets to, it won't always be perfect, because you have to have a level when you're on stage.
Yeah, that's right.
It won't always be perfect, but I'm going to make sure that those two people, those two men, those two women are as similar as they could possibly be. And I love the word you use, systems. Because you need to have systems to be above reproach. You need to have people. You need to have guys that know possibly your struggles, know possibly your secrets, know the things that could harm or attack your integrity or your transparency, and that you have given room to and freedom to drop you a message every now and again, to give you a phone call every now and again. And often these people can see, even if it's not a conversation about reproach, they can just see you and maybe going about normal business, and they can see something is off. Or they can see like he doesn't normally react like that. Or she doesn't normally speak like that when she's upset. I mean, you've done that to me a lot. Like, I know how Phil handles himself, and what Phil just did there, I'm not sure that's really Phil. And they're able to come in and speak and say, hey man, how's things going? How's this going? How's this thing that we both know you struggle with? Or how's this going? And then for us to not get the back up and back off, and it's to say, I've given somebody freedom in this area, because what's the goal? The goal is to be above reproach. The goal is to be transparent. The goal is to have integrity. And if we want to be people, like Paul's saying, hey, we want to be above reproach, we've got to have the systems, we've got to have the people, because I don't want to be a guy that when I'm at home, I'm one way, but then when I get on stage, I'm completely different. I just don't think it's sustainable.
No, you're right. And I think we mustn't confuse integrity with perfection. Integrity is being whole. So it's being who you are in every area, like you were saying. But it's how do I have integrity with my financial dealings? Am I dealing with gray area with money? How are
all
my
of that
relationships?
comes back.
It does come back. And if you're different personalities, right, which does happen, duplicity happens, and then you have to either believe the lie, or you have to, one of those personalities has to win out. So that's kind of how it goes, and that's causes explosions. But for people to have integrity, and the thing is, integrity is, I might say, actually, you know what, I don't have a great financial life, but I'm getting help for it. That's having integrity.
That's great.
And when you say transparency, I agree. But the thing is, with leadership, at different levels of leadership, you carry different burdens. Now, being transparent doesn't mean, hey, watch me bleed.
Everybody can have everything.
No, that's not what we're talking about. And it's just that you're not hiding anything from people.
Yeah.
But leaders have to carry different burdens, and some of those burdens can't be spoken to from
Sure.
anybody, but somebody should know. And so also it's a leadership. There's different levels. Even in is it Exodus 7:19? The Jethro principle, where Jethro speaks to Moses.
18 or 19.
Like these are have leaders over thousands, hundreds, tens, or 50s and tens or something like that. So there's clear distinction between different levels of leadership. And so this area of above reproach might be a growing area. That's fine as long as it's growing in the right direction.
As long as it's going somewhere.
And that's the key, I think.
Yeah.
But the higher in leadership you go, and that's where Paul's addressing this specifically to, I think, like elders and senior leaders within the church, is, hey, you need to have people around that are above reproach.
Good.
Because it's more than just the organization. It's the name of Jesus you're carrying at the end of the day.
That's who we
why
represent.
as Christians, we should all live above reproach.
Yeah.
But especially on leaders.
Good. I love this one if we're going to move along here. Talking about a good reputation and a good reputation with outsiders. And I think this deserves a few minutes chat because I think for a large part, and I think there's definitely a lot of people that, especially in church circles, the good reputation with outsiders or the good reputation with unbelievers becomes much less of a priority compared to what we're trying to do on the inside and what we're trying to do with the people that maybe we're called to lead and maybe we're called to run with and carry. And this is just my perspective.
Bring it.
Yeah, so...
Bring the rain.
I was like, come on, somebody. So I find that this is so important because if people are on the outside looking in, there's always got to be a level of... okay, it's not what I believe today, and it's not necessarily where I want to be today, but that person or that leader, I don't feel like they necessarily don't like me because I'm not a Christian or judge me because I don't do things that way. I still feel the love. I still feel the level of welcome. I still feel even if I am or wasn't in the church, it feels like I'm getting similar treatment. The reason I find that so important because one day that person might feel the urge or the need to come to your church or to just try it or everything is going down the drain and they remember, hey, but there was this one guy. I've had these terrible experiences with church. There's this one guy or this one lady who I just felt like there was a warmth. I felt like there was a welcome. My life was a mess. There was nothing pretty about what I was doing, but I just felt like jeepers, like that's someone that I can talk to. And I'm speaking about reputation, maybe more on a personal level now.
But I think that's the thing. I think reputation is a personal.
Yeah. There needs to be a moment where somebody can say, well, that's the person or that's the church or that's the lady I would love to go and connect with. But I don't know if it is the extremists, and I could be speaking about a very small group of people now. So forgive me if I'm doing that. No. But for some people and for some reasons, it's like when we become believers, we become so sold out and so we're on fire for the cause, which I love and which I'm for and which I back, but to the expense of I now never speak or I never spend time or I never invest or I never think about people who don't know God anymore or people who aren't in my church anymore. And if I do, it's generally negative. Or if I do, it's generally not with the concern that in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time, this person may need, or we all need to, but maybe this person wants to know Jesus on an intimate level, on a level that will change their life effectively. Sure. So this good reputation, and even with outside believers and with believers alike, I feel this is so big because there's so much at stake, but not everybody is at the position of, I'm in your church, like I follow you, I believe in God. Not everybody's at that place right now. It does not mean you are not going to interact or influence people that in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time are going to be in that spot.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to look further than social media to see
Let's go
the
there.
kind of reputation that believers have built up for themselves. I think reputation is what is it that you think about when you think about that person, when that person thinks about you.
First thing that comes to mind, yeah.
And I think the way that we are called to do that is in a way, what do I do for people who can do nothing for me? Because then you will serve them in a way that builds your reputation.
Yeah.
Can I serve them? Can I help them? Am I giving them, dignity? It's like you oh no, like you speak to Christians and it's all Christian language and it's all like, oh, I love you, brother, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know anybody who talks like that, but I'm just assuming.
I'm sure there are some people who talk like that.
And then you go to work and you're the biggest, gossiper, and you're lying and you're cheating.
Yeah.
And so your unsaved people are like,
that's the church guy.
what?
Yeah.
Again, different if you're on a journey. We're not like, but as a leader, you have to form a good reputation where people go, yeah, he's just a good guy. Like he's an honest guy. He doesn't always get involved. We have a go at him because he's not always coming to what we want to do. But we trust him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good reputation. And the early church, even though not everybody liked them and they were persecuted, and some people were terrified of them, they had a good reputation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should get back to that.
Yeah, add people that add value to everybody's life. When we walk into a room, regardless of the atmosphere or environment of the room, do we make it better? Do people feel better after being around us? Do they feel lighter? Yeah. Do they feel happier? Totally. Or are we the people that drain energy from a room? Totally. I heard a talk yesterday about growth in a church, and I mean this is in the context of people who are potentially leading churches or integral to leading churches. The thing that hurts growth the most are the people that they're there. They're the people that criticize. They're the people that nitpick. They're the people that just pull any type of energy and life out of a room. And I'm not saying we need people that are just yes men. Of course not. Like we'll never grow like that or never develop. But I think someone with a good reputation is someone who's mastered the art of I'm going to be life-giving. I mean, this podcast is about adding value. I'm going to be someone who adds value. And like you said, even if they'll never come to my church. Yeah. Sometimes we can be, as Christian leaders, we're like, hey, if there's a chance that this guy can come to our church, buy them a car. Like, you put out all the stops, obviously. Yeah. Like, that's normal. But maybe there's someone whose just chances are very low, close to zero, that they'll ever come to your church. How do you treat that person? Yeah. How are you around that person? Totally. I think that's what kind of has that reputation. Maybe I can put you on the spot quickly. If
no,
you don't have to answer if you don't want to. When I say good reputation, is there a leader that comes to mind for you that you think about? And it could be even someone you've never met before, but just things you've heard about them, and they've just got an exemplary reputation in church, maybe even outside of church, or someone you're like, geez, that's someone that I could learn a lot from.
Yeah, there's many. I think there's those who are well known and those who aren't well known.
Yeah.
So one of the elders in our church that I would know very well like that would be Alexi, and obviously we've got other elders like Derek as well.
Yeah.
I think our pastors have a good reputation as well, Graham and Jenny. And I think the thing is not everyone's going to be well liked, and that's okay. Pastors like Craig Grishel from Life Church, guys like Louis Gig. Like there's a lot of people out there, and again on different scales. There's leaders within the AOG that have seriously good integrity, who have good reputation. Donovan Kutsia, who's preached here many times. There's leaders in our own church who I think have a phenomenal reputation with people outside there. Leaders that are leading at different levels. That they might not be well known, but they've got a good reputation. And so, there would be plenty. I can't name them all by name.
No,
but
it's like I want a list of 100.
Yeah, at least 100. and what the problem is, like the person who's listening to this podcast who didn't get a shout out, they're like, oh, okay, cool. So
Sven thinks I've got a bad reputation.
Terrible reputation. No, I think it's a good question. I think as leaders, because every Christian should develop a good reputation, but especially as leaders, because I don't know if you would want someone in your team as a leader with you who's like, who has the lingo, who has the insider language and knows all the jokes and everything, but when they go to work tomorrow, they're cursing, all these other things, and you're like, there's a duplicity there in a sense, and the real you is going to come out, and so it should be a red flag and go, whoa, like, I don't know if you've got a good reputation. Yeah,
very good. Jeez, I'm enjoying this. There's so many here to jump on. A couple have jumped out of me and that I want to touch on and speak about. I think one that we were chatting a little bit about earlier was this traits of hospitable and being a hospitable person.
Sure.
And I think that hospitality in a big way is so important to leadership because, again, that's a direct point of contact for how we treat and make people feel. And you shared a message a couple of weeks ago about Mary and Martha. And that message was about Jesus. And the message itself was slightly, not preaching on hospitality, but preaching about someone who was very interested and very focused on making the environment, just making sure people had food, making 100%. Sure people felt comfortable, making sure that that the environment was running well, that was conducive to what they were trying to do. Being hospitable as a leader in a church context and I think focusing on how people feel and making sure that things run well. Would you say that in your kind of 10 years or 15 or however long you've been leading, I mean, you're so young still.
Okay, I was wondering where this was going.
Started 10, 11 years old. Would you say that someone who is hospitable and really focuses on the environment of a room and how people feel, would you say that's something that you consider as quite important?
100%. I think as a kingdom value, there are people who have the gift of hospitality who it comes really easily to.
True.
And they take it to another level.
And they're like, and you know when you're with them.
Yes.
You know when you're in that life group. It just feels like you've got a personalized name card when you walk
exactly.
in. It's
you're
like it's
part
crazy.
of the family and it's your first time there.
Yeah.
And that's a gift.
Yeah, that's different.
So we're not talking about a gift. We're talking about a character, a quality.
Yeah.
And as a quality, 100%. I think, there's in some scriptures it's where in the Bible where it's some people have hosted angels and not even known it.
Wow.
And I think hospitality speaks to value. How do I value you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you don't have the gift, you might not have all the nice things but it's just about what's the atmosphere around you.
Yeah.
Hospitality looks like you're welcome here.
Yeah.
So you can host someone in a group. Doesn't have to be in a home.
Yeah.
But on a practical level, hospitality looks like what do people have to ask you for something or are you offering it first?
Yeah.
I learned hospitality from my wife's parents. Where
they're great.
Once you're full, they're offering you more food.
Yeah.
Because it's not always about the food. It's not always about what's there before you. It's the fact that you shouldn't have to want for anything.
Yes.
When you're there, and that's a gift. Okay.
Yes,
But the characteristic of, hey, I can make sure that there is something for you to drink, something for you to eat, and hospitality speaks to, I give you the best of what I have, not the worst of what I have.
Yeah.
And so there's I think it's in Proverbs. I've been reading through Proverbs every day. And one of the Proverbs it teaches that don't eat the fine foods of someone who is sort of counting the cost because you'll get sick on it.
Yeah.
So it's this thing of, let's not try and wow people with what we have before them, but let's make sure that what we're giving them is the best. So we don't hide the good stuff from people when they come over. We offer the good stuff when they come. I think it's just simple things like that because it speaks to valuing people.
Some of the most, sorry to interrupt, but
please.
Some of the most memorable experiences and moments of my kind of early life hanging out with leaders and hanging out with people have been with hospitable people because it's how someone makes you feel. I mean, I can attest. I've had a meal with your in-laws, Uncle Alex, Auntie Paul, and how you feel there. It feels like you're so important.
Yeah.
It feels like you're the special guest. You're the VIP. We need to make sure you're fit, and that isn't the case.
Yeah.
But it's like an ability to make people feel. It's like I want to use the word inclusive, but I think great leaders, you can be in a circle, you could be chatting to 10, 15, 20 people. Great leaders have an ability to make everybody feel like they're important, they're integral in the conversation. They're included in that moment. They're included. The atmosphere is worse if they weren't there.
Yeah.
The group is worse off if they weren't there. So I agree, not everybody has that gift. I think it's something that develops. I think as an early, like when I was leading life groups in the beginning, I used, as soon as you have to lead a group, you start becoming really aware of the atmosphere.
Yes.
If you're just attending, you don't really. But now we know that it's very rare that you'll be in a room with Sven or I, if it's a live group or thing like that, where there's a bit of music playing, because we know that just kills kind of maybe the silence, maybe the awkwardness that's there in an early group, and you just become aware of the atmosphere and the environment and how people feel, and it develops. The more you do it, the more you hang out with people, the more you start to pick up on atmosphere, and the more you start to pick up on how people feel, and it's not about getting in somebody's face and just speaking speaking to one person for an hour, but it's an ability that you can have that as time goes on and as people are joining in, they just feel so special.
Yes.
And I don't know about you, but when I feel like that, I want to go back there.
Yeah.
I want to spend more time. I want to give more of myself to whatever ministry that is, whatever leader. I want to give them more space in my life, because if you can make me feel like that, if you can make me feel like that, then I'm ready to kind of do what you're asking me to do. Give trust, give respect, give all those things.
Yeah, that's right. Leaders take responsibility for the atmosphere around them.
Yeah.
And if maybe it's not hosting someone at your house.
No, it could be different.
Someone could come to church, for instance, and you notice that there's one person outside of your circle.
Yeah, you talk about that.
It looks like including them into your circle. Yeah. It's just looking out for people and them feeling, oh wow, somebody cares, somebody values me.
Yeah.
And that's what hospitality. Like, you can't be a good leader if you can't be hospitable, because you're just not going to include people into your world, and then people are going to become tools for you to use rather than people to love.
Yeah.
And so we want to be around people who are hospitable, because it's like, yeah, cool, we can get on,
Yeah.
I think it's great.
It's a decision, because it's so much easier to get around the people that you know and that you're comfortable with and talk about the things that you want to talk about, like where there's common ground, where there's room. But like you're saying, the leader that's ready to step into the position that we're talking about is someone who is super aware and is super just prepared and ready to bring anybody alongside, include them, and then to find common ground quickly.
Yeah, good.
Chris just talks about divine flow, and he talks about that you'll have people in your life where it just flows. Don't ask questions why. It just works, and it's fun, and it's easy, and it's light, and you feel better after to have people like that. And sometimes you'll come across people that are going to be in your circle that you might not have that divine flow, but he says you will be able to, even if it's 1% of something, you will be able to find something. I think good leaders find that one thing quick, and then they live there.
100%.
And they build common ground, and they build relationship. And I think that forms, that's such a big part of hospitality.
Good.
Because not everyone is going to be a football fan, or not everyone is going to love watching the whole day of sport on a Saturday, or what the things. Yeah. I mean, if you don't. But maybe they're into something different, maybe into gaming or into reading or something like that. I think good leaders have got an ability. Hospitable leaders have got an ability to be like, I'm gonna find quickly what this person digs.
It's good.
And I'm gonna live there, and I'm gonna chat, and they're gonna feel bigger, and they're gonna feel included after that.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think we'll just be better people if we try to live a bit more like that.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't want a leader who can't be hospitable.
Yeah.
Okay. Like who not saying you don't have the gift, but just saying that you're not thinking about other people, because the hospitality is about serving other people.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yeah,
so
big time.
Good quality to have as a leader. And also, I think it builds influence with people.
Big time.
People begin to trust you if you're consistently hospitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, if you are tracking with us, I don't know how much time we've probably got left for one more.
We want people wanting more. Come back for more next week.
Well, then what we'll do is, if there's
we're going to give away all the gold on the first one.
I hear you. We could do another. We got to keep episode material here. What you can do is, if you did enjoy this and you want to read more about this, 1 Timothy 3. That's where we're finding our material at the moment from the Living Word of God. Have a read through it. There might be another episode worth of material here that we can chat about. But again, the focus of this conversation was, this is a level of leadership that is high. Yeah. This is a level of leadership that we think all should aspire to in some way. Yeah. Not everyone is going to be a life group leader, but in some way it's a higher form, high level of leadership. So it's not about having all of these things locked down in the vault, but it's about understanding that there are characteristics, there are traits that we need to, as believers, aspire to, work on, develop on, so that God can help us become effective leaders in the different environments that we find ourselves in. So these are specific, these are focusing on different areas. But even when we spoke about love, trustworthiness, faithfulness, we can't overlook these things. Rely on gifting, rely on skill, rely on things that we've learned. We've got to say we've got to become big people on the inside, equip ourselves with great traits, with godly traits, things that God has put in the Word of God for us to become. And in that way, we can and will become significant, effective leaders in our own right.
Brilliant. I think maybe a good way to close off is just to summarize what all these traits kind of are, that people can get a glimpse of it.
Yeah.
Again, it's on different levels. So for a church leader, like someone who's leading a pastor or a staff member or someone who's in oversight, there's a different level of responsibility.
Yeah.
And then someone who, what Paul would describe to Timothy as a deacon, is someone who's actually just a servant leader in the church,
Yeah.
who's a life group leader, or leads a team, or leads in a ministry.
A dream team
somewhere.
in our context.
Exactly. So I don't know if you just want to summarize, just kind of touch on a couple of them.
Yeah.
We don't have to go, we're not digging into it, just kind of glossing over the different qualities and stuff that we can talk about in future episodes.
Yeah, so there's so many good things here. I think just to name a few of them, able to teach, I think, is something great. I think not everybody is going to become a preacher and is going to stand and is going to prepare sermons and preach. But I think if we can all develop an ability to read the Word of God and share it with other people and be able to teach, I think is a great quality, a great trait to have. A lot of these can come under the banner of good family life. I think we need to be people that in wherever we are, if we are leading families, if we're single, married, we've got kids, like you're talking about, we've got obedient children, we respect family life, we're faithful to our spouse, and we understand that your family is such an important ministry. It's your first ministry. A guy like Wayne Cordero says, like, if you're going to have to pick family or ministry, if you lose something in your family, you don't often come back for that. If your marriage didn't get the attention it deserved, or the relationship with your kids didn't get the attention it deserved, and that part of your life is not as strong as it needs to be, that's going to be the focal point. So someone who's stepping into a position of strong leadership needs to have a huge focus on family, self-controlled, respectable. I love, don't abuse alcohol, which is a conversation in itself. Not violent, not quarrelsome, not looking for people to fight. And this is awesome, because I think that's a conversation itself. It feels like you on social media, we're looking for we're looking for fights. We're looking for people who have different. But the Word of God says that leaders aren't quarrelsome people. We're not looking for fights. People can have a different opinion. People can view things differently, but we're not out there looking for fights. Not a lover of money, even temperate. Is an ability to be just kind of mild in a way. We can be passionate about other things and passionate about the right stuff, but are you a hothead? Like to do this?
Are you up and down? Who are we gonna get on what day?
Yeah, who are we gonna get on what day? Can you trust? You can't really trust somebody like that, can you?
Hard,
or it's very hard to have real conversations, because who am I speaking to today?
Yeah, exactly.
Am I gonna get totally smashed right now, or is this gonna be a chill thing? So some of these are brilliant, and I think it takes everybody just take some time to read through these.
That sounds good. Look forward to future discussions and conversations about it. And guys, we would love to hear back from our community. So if you've got any thoughts, questions, or maybe an area that you thought really impacted you in this conversation, let us know. We'd love to hear it on our social media, or leave it in a comment section if you're on YouTube. On the podcast, feel free to just find us on Instagram at the 167 podcast and DM us. We'd love to hear whatever feedback you guys have got, so we can keep on improving and getting better with you on the journey.
Yeah.
Awesome. It was a good conversation. Thanks, bud.
I love this. Great conversation. God bless you guys. Thank you, Sven. And we'll see you guys next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.